Thanks, Oireachtas, and welcome the opportunity to speak on this very important motion. I think the issue with defective concrete, what we had in Leinster was a huge problem. But what we're seeing in Donegal and down along the northwest on the eastern or on the western seaboard is catastrophic in terms of the scale of it and the effects that it's having on families. And I think that the motion, is very, very reasonable, calling for a cease in partial remediation to reinstate all the original determinations of qualified engineers, to legislate to guarantee the retrospective support and to establish an independent statutory authority to deal with that. That's some of the more important items that's called for in this motion. I think that it's really important that it's not just the physical effects of houses falling down, but it's literally people's lives falling down around them, people paying huge mortgages for houses that are now crumbling. And then that's before you even move on to the health and safety issues that are there as well, and the effects that it's having on people's health. I think the system with appeals, the fact that appeals are left unsolved over a protracted period of time, that is adding to it. The appeal system needs to be speeded up. There clearly are problems with it. Some homeowners have been forced into cheaper remediation works and downgrades. I think that the situation in relation to putting extra costs on people, a lot of people are paying mortgages that they're already stretched with. They may be in arrears, and they cannot. And then, of course, there's the added cost of having to rent accommodation, and that has to be all factored into consideration. The remedial scheme has been at times pitched more like a grant, excuse me, than actually a compensation scheme or a remediation scheme, and that isn't good enough. It can't be. This is no fault of the people who are living in the homes. People bought the homes, people built the homes. They had no control over what kind of material was going into them. But the state can have an influence on this. People are in a situation where there's no choice but to stay in these unsafe homes. And the scheme as well, I think it's very important that, and the motion calls for it, is that it covers social housing, creches, community facilities, and indeed businesses. I want to just reflect in a minute. In 2014, Minister Phil Hogan brought forward a statutory instrument, Building Controls Amendment Regulation 2014 SI 9, or number 9. And could I just say that at that time, up to then, under the Fianna Fáil and Progressive Democrats who crashed the building industry and crashed the economy, and every worker, I just want to remind the House, depending on interest rates, but it averages around €400 a year every worker pays to fill that black hole that was created during that economic crash caused by the Progressive Democrats and by Fianna Fáil during the noughties. But let's move on. The building controls was an attempt to rectify the flaw in building standards and certification in 2014. And I challenged Phil Hogan on this at the time. And what he put in place was a system where, and I'm reading it here, where the role would be carried out by a competent registered professional. The problem is the assigned certifier is appointed by the building owner. And that's another form of self-certification. And that hasn't been rectified. And there's a flaw in building controls in this country. And it doesn't matter what body or what office is out, Minister, unless you address that flaw will remain. I raised this with him here several times on the floor of the Dáil, going back 11 years ago. And could I also say to you that in relation to the quarries, in the minute I have left, in relation to the quarries, we can't undo the past. We have to try and deal with the problem now. And it's a big problem for government, for opposition, for society, taxpayers and the building industry to remediate and sort out all of this. But we need to stop these things from happening. And one of the things that needs to happen is there needs to be spot checks of quality control on the material coming out of quarries. And if quarry owners knew that they could have a spot check at any time that would stop the operation of the quarry, and I'm not trying to obstruct building work here because we need to speed up a lot of it, but to ensure that samples taken are tested scientifically, and where there's evidence of defective material, that quarry ceases operation. And it would appeal to the government to bring in a system where the local authority or some other competent authority could do that. And that's all I'm going to say on it. I'm going to leave it to the experts, the people from Donegal, to carry on the discussion. Thank you.